All right. Aha, look at that. All right. So we are using the Center of Excellence for Women in Technologies slide deck here, and I was duly impressed with the acknowledgement of Indigenous communities at the start of it. So I thought before I'd get to my first slide, I'd acknowledge that and say that I appreciate it, certainly. But the focus of this talk is going to be about data science in the travel industry. And we're going to talk about a project that both Liren and I have been part of, which has been to develop what we've called the Cornerstone Travel Index, and why it is that we went about doing that, how it is that we went about doing that, and kind of where we're going. So hopefully you'll get a bit of a flavor for outside of the classroom, I guess, what data science is or can be in this particular case, the types of questions, the types of approaches that we take in using data science within a real business context. And by all means, if you have questions, feel free to ask them. And I will try to leave time at the end as well. But if you have a question that comes up as I'm going, that's okay. Interactive is great. And Liren, if you happen to see that and I miss it, give me a heads up. My name is Rob Stewart Ingersoll. I am a data scientist for Cornerstone. And I didn't start out as a data scientist. I started out as a political scientist, but trained in quantitative methods. And over the course of my career, I really have delved more deeply into the pure data side, I guess, of things, and with Cornerstone within the travel industry. And so what we're going to do as we proceed here is I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to Cornerstone Information Systems. Probably many of you, most of you don't know who Cornerstone is, and that's okay, but we are in Bloomington. And we have a beautiful headquarters, the Foundry, on Kirkwood, just to about a block west of the square next to the Beeline. And we are a travel technology company, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means, and particularly for us, talk a little bit about data science and what we do to answer that question that Liren popped up with at the beginning. And then I'm going to talk about the project, the Cornerstone Travel Index, what the challenge was that we were confronting that led us to start this, how we went about planning and developing that index, what the initial solution that we came up with, sort of solution 1.0, turned out to be, and how we see that evolving into the future. So Cornerstone Information Systems is, as I said, it's a technology partner behind the scenes of tens of millions of automated bookings. Our technology helps companies configure workflow and services that deliver measurable savings and insights to the management of travel programs and operations. And so that's from our website. But let me give you a bit of a bit deeper explanation on that. We have effectively we have four types of primary customers. Most of our customers are travel management companies, or TMCs. And travel management companies do exactly what their name implies. They manage travel for corporate organizations. So companies come in, they hire a travel management company to go ahead and provide often a booking tool, as well as a range of integrated tools for managing corporate travel, which is or was prior to COVID, $1 trillion a year industry. And what I didn't know before I joined Cornerstone is that, you know, whether you're booking, when you're booking on a business trip, there's a whole process that has to go on behind the scenes when you say click on, when you've looked and you found your flight and you found your hotel and you click on book, and it all seems to just happen automatically for you. There's actually a whole series of things that happen behind the scenes, and Cornerstone does that, automates that for travel management companies, for some of the larger travel providers, online travel agencies, which are organizations kind of like Expedia is probably the biggest OTA out there, booking.com, hotels.com, those are all OTAs. Some corporations work with us directly, rather than going through travel management companies. And we also have a significant volume of work with the GSA, the federal government. And so all of these, in all of these cases, our customers, have personnel that are going out and traveling to different places, and they're booking their travel. And what happens behind the scenes once they do that is that there's a whole quality check process. Quality checking can include stuff from their employer's travel policies, and making sure that whatever booking they just made is in compliance with those. It can be as detailed as the actual characters and entries throughout the record that generates the ticket, to make sure that all the information is there and it's readable and is appropriate. It can be making sure that given your employer's contracts with different airlines, that you're getting the best possible rate on your flight or on your hotel booking or on your car rental that you're due, and more. So there are a lot of different things that get checked between when you hit click and book to the point at which your ticket actually gets generated. And even after that, there may be some of our customers will use products of ours that continue to check to make sure that the fare that they're paying for a given flight doesn't get cheaper over time. Because a lot of times you do your planning at the beginning of the year, and you book your travel out months in advance, and things can happen between the time you book and when you travel, where your ticket may end up cheaper than what you actually booked it at the beginning. And so one of the things that we can do automatically is to check that every day and make sure that that ticket is indeed the lowest price, and that we can't do better for you, even considering, say, the change fee that comes along with exchanging that ticket. Oftentimes, we can still save on top of that, and if that is true, then our system, what we call IQCX, will rebook that, reticket that flight at the cheaper rate. And that obviously, when that accumulates over multiple trips, over many employees, that can save companies quite a bit of money. And so that is really our core focus, is on that automation. But we've been, the company has been around for 30 years. And over that time, that automation has also given rise to some other things that we do for clients, including reporting back in different ways to them about what their customers, the corporations, are doing, how much they're spending, where they're spending it, who's traveling a lot, all the way down to the individual, right? And we can send this reporting back in various different ways, whether that's straight exporting of spreadsheets, that Excel spreadsheets that companies, that travel managers will then use to generate their own reports, or whether that's through our own analytics tool called Travel Optics, which is built for any of you who have some good experience with BI tools, business intelligence tools. It is built on the ClickSense platform.
And so basically, we have a lot of data.
So we've got a ton of data, and this is one of the things that that I'm going to point out as we move forward, is that so we're a travel technology company, but we have increasingly come to understand over the past several years, as technology has allowed us to, really, we're a data company too. We have got a lot of data coming through, some of which we historically have captured and reported on, but a lot of which we haven't, because that automating process has, when we got started 30 years ago, was just cranked through the transactions that it needed to, but it was sort of ephemeral, right? The data went through that transaction, it did what it needed to do, and then it just got rid of it, because storing data 30 years ago was a lot bigger deal and a lot more expensive than it is now. And there certainly wasn't any such thing. Nobody was talking about data scientists 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or barely even 10 years ago. So that's something that we've really grown into over the past decade or so. And one of the questions that came up ahead of time that Liren sort of alluded to at the beginning was, what do data scientists or data engineers do? Are they computer programmers? Was that the
Yep.
right? Okay. And the answer is yes, no, kind of depends on who you're talking about, and how a data scientist or data engineer's role plays out within their given organization. But there are some common things, right? So data science is really this overlapping of three things. On the one hand, a deep understanding of data, what data is, how it is that we handle it, how it is that we make use of it, and the techniques that we can use to analyze it, right? And that's the math, statistics, data. Then there's the computer science IT side of it, which is the component that, yes, you do need to have some skills in programming, right? Primarily, I would say, as far as data scientists are concerned, Python is one of the more common languages. R is my favorite, but that's mainly because I learned it first. I'm working on transitioning more and more over to Python though, because I find that more people know Python, and so within the context of a business setting, where you want to share responsibilities and management of different technologies, you want to be using things that your colleagues use too, so that you can work more as a team. And there are some other languages as well. Data engineers would in our context, in Cornerstone's context, would also work with those languages, and would also tend to work with integrating and maintaining the systems that we work within, whether that's our own tools. IQCX, as I mentioned before, is the platform that does that automation. But we have sort of a hybrid setup at Cornerstone where we house a good deal of our data on premises in physical servers, and so there's a whole ecosystem there that has to be maintained. Databases within Microsoft SQL Server that are managed and maintained, in which we house a lot of our data. But then also we make increasing use of AWS, and so the cloud environment. And there's such a range of different types of tools that you can make use of, whether that is for analytics or whether it's for ELT, extracting, loading, transforming data. Transformation of data is a big part of what I do as a data scientist, and certainly what data engineers do. One of the interesting things about the travel industry, though I think probably most people would say this about their own industries, is the data is really dirty. It's messy, and so even when it goes through those IQCX, for example, identifying how many of X companies employees stayed at a particular hotel off of Times Square can be really a challenging thing, because you may have records that make that same address appear in, I don't know, 20 different ways. And so that adds challenges to how you make sure you're getting your counts right, which, going back to my earlier point, then affects the company's negotiations with Marriott or Hilton or whoever they're setting up corporate rates with. And so transformation of data, normalization of data, is something that data scientists and data engineers would work with. We've been, for example, for that particular type of project, we've been focusing a bit on a tool within AWS called Amazon Glue, Amazon Glue Data Brew, specifically, to think about how to normalize hotel information. So
I just got out of a meeting actually with one of our systems guys who was trying to explain how much data one of our backups is. And he told me, Liren, imagine I gave you a notepad that was 6 terabytes big, and you have to find pieces of information out of it.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yep. I mean, and that's what we do. And particularly on the data and analytics side of things. I jumped ahead on this, and I think I've made these points. So I'm gonna continue on to the next slide, which is the challenge. So one thing should stand out about this graph. You know, you don't have to be a data scientist to see that there was a massive drop in the volume of travel at the end of February, the beginning of March of 2020. And obviously that coincides with the onset of COVID here in the United States. This data that I'm using here is actually publicly available. It's provided by TSA. As may be familiar to many of you who have looked at COVID data over the past couple of years, I'm using the 7-day average of the number of passengers that TSA is clocking through their gates in the US on a day-to-day basis. And the reason that we do that is that really, I don't know if this looks smooth to you or not, these lines. I mean, there's a lot of up and downs going on, but I can assure you that it would be almost unreadable if I did actually the number of passengers from day to day, because that fluctuates, and it fluctuates based on, you know, whether it's a Tuesday or a Friday or a Sunday or whatever. And so we smooth that out by creating a moving 7-day average. And as a company who deals in transactions of bookings, you know, think about the beginning part of that line. And we're going along, we're moving along, things are going great. You know, we're hearing some scary things coming out of China, then Italy. We even had some of our colleagues over in Italy during that initial wave who got COVID, and then all of a sudden it hit the US and travel stopped. It ground to a halt. And this isn't 100% unprecedented. After September 11th, in 2001, there was a significant drop off as well, but it rebounded pretty quick. And as you can see, the process of coming back from that initial drop has been bumpy and has taken a while, and we're not there yet. But we're getting closer and closer. As you can see, that last data point is on March 20th, so a few days ago. But it's getting back up to the point where it was before travel tanked. But so this created a challenge for us internally, as well as externally. So because it has been such a gradual process of returning, and I would add that last piece of data, that last count, includes both leisure and corporate travel, and leisure has rebounded more quickly than corporate travel, because as you can imagine, companies have additional considerations about what's necessary and what's not and whether they want their people out traveling quite yet, whether they're ready to start that up again. And of course, all the changes, including what we're using right here, with remote technology has changed the way that we meet with one another. COVID-19 is a transformative shock to the travel industry, and it's ongoing. Those ups and downs that I showed in that last graph, that last big dip, that's Omicron. So each successive wave has an effect, an immediate effect on travel. And so we realized that this was going to change things significantly. It was going to change things for us in terms of how many transactions we had coming through, and therefore revenue that we're generating. It was an enormous challenge, is an enormous challenge for our customers. Even before the pandemic, the travel industry, the business travel industry was one that really was consolidating into a smaller number of really big players, right? And so they were already buying up the old mom and pop travel agencies, business travel agencies. And when travel dipped so much, those mom and pop agencies found it increasingly difficult to stay open. And so what we've seen is that a number of our customers have actually bought up a number of our other customers, which from our perspective means that we're keeping those transactions and will recoup those as travel grows back. But that trend has definitely been enhanced or compounded by the pandemic. And given that it has been so profound, and given that it's likely to have long-term consequences, changes, both in terms of policies that companies have about their travel and in terms of the booking behavior of companies and their employees, we realized that we really needed to get an understanding of a better look at what was actually happening, what was happening in terms of the volume of travel, the type of travel, the cost of travel, and how that was changing in a more dynamic way than say checking, every several months or at the end of year reporting. And so what we did was we asked ourselves, well, okay, what is it that we want to know? Well, effectively, we want to know what the health is of the travel industry, right? How is that changing? Is it getting better? Is it coming back? How much? Our customers need to know this as well. How can we measure that? Well, there are some different ways that we can measure that, and some different ways that we can take the measurements that we create, and we can dig down even deeper to get more granular sense of where and how the health of the travel industry is improving or not. But it is. Where can we obtain the data for these measures, and what are the risks that we have to mitigate for? And this was a really, really big part of the early discussions, because we are acutely aware that we are in possession of data that, if we're not really careful, could expose information about our customers or travelers or other things that we don't want to expose. And so we wanted to make absolutely sure that we were only using the data that that was coming in from customers who had agreed to allow their data to be used for research and development purposes. That the way that we extracted and transformed and loaded that data, anonymized it entirely, not only in terms of any individual information that that pertains to travelers, but also to the companies who they work for, or the travel management companies who are managing their travel. You know, Liren and I both worked on this. Sean McDermott, who's our CFO, was very involved in this, and he gave me a direct challenge. He said, Rob, I want this to be so airtight that we can't even go back from what we push out and track those numbers back to the customers that they came from ourselves. And that's a challenge. That's a big challenge. It takes a lot of thought. And that's where, you know, if you think about that Venn diagram I put up before, that's where that data and math and thinking through how it is that different pieces of data fit together and where it is that it might expose information that we don't want exposed. And so we were very, very cautious in the way that we set that up. And ultimately we did identify a sample set that is consistent. This is an important methodology point, that is consistent over time. It's the same sample set that we are generating measures from across time. And it is entirely anonymized. And how do we implement this, right? Once we've decided we want these measures, we've got this data, we're being really careful about it in these ways, how do we then get our hands on that data in the sample that we want, completely anonymized? And then how do we begin to work on it, massage it, wrangle it so that we can make sensible metrics out of it? And what we came up with was, at least initially, was to focus on three types of travel, which make up by far the majority of our data. That is air, hotel, and car rentals. We also deal with rail bookings, but we did not incorporate that yet into our index. So we wanted to know what are the actual numbers? What's the frequency of travel that's occurring from month to month? And here again, if you look at the area graph down at the bottom, you can see that big drop for this sample set from January of 2020 at 770,000 bookings during that month, all the way down to about 37,000 in April. But we've increased over time to the point where last month, February, that sample set had about 390,000 air trips. Most trips that get booked through us have air. There are some that are only hotel, only car, but most have air. And so we built this out within our, as I said, Travel Optics, our business intelligence tool. And from the frequency metrics, then we said, okay, great. We can see how much travel is going on, how many nights or stays people are booking at hotels. We can see how many car rentals they're doing, but we also want to know how much they're spending, right? And this has really ended up being our focus in the way that we distribute this index. And I'm going to show you that here. So our method of distribution, which is really Liren's end of the house, is to make it look interesting, eye-catching, integrate it into the website, not as a charged something that we charge for, but as something that might be interest generating for our customers who come to our website, might provide them with useful information, and also might give them a sense that, hey, Cornerstone's a data company. They can do some interesting things with data. I wonder what is going on with ours, right? I wonder how that matches up against others in the industry, and ultimately others who are similar types of organizations to us. And I'll talk about that here in a bit. But so our focus on the website and in the travel index ended up being more on spend than on frequency. And one of the interesting conversations that Liren and I had early on was, well, what should the up arrows be green or red? Right? These are some of the things that you have to think about, because is it good when I think about buying a plane ticket? If I'm seeing that there's a 16% increase in the cost of those tickets over the last month, maybe I don't think that's so good. Maybe I think that should be a red arrow. But the adage that holds true for just about everything holds true for this too. Consider your audience, right? These are travel management companies who are our primary customers, and what they want to see is more spend. They want to see more trips, more spend that is getting managed, and that means a healthy travel.
And more commissions for themselves.
And more commissions for themselves, exactly. You can see that within February, from average trip spend to average flight cost to average car rental, all of those are going up. And
yeah, car rental jumped like $100 last month, and we still don't really know why. Trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Car rental numbers have been a little bit wonky too. I think from the beginning, they haven't necessarily been as consistent with the others, and the old academic in me says, maybe that's because there's been a transition, between air and car, as people didn't want to be on planes for a while. I don't know. We haven't figured out the actual cause for that yet. But we know that in terms of frequency, all of these types of travel are increasing. And we know that in general, the spend is increasing as well. Though last month we saw a 6% decrease in the average hotel spend.
And granted, in the hotel spend too, we average the spend per night with the days. So it's not like the people are spending $500 per night in the hotel. For a while, we were taking the cost per day to be the index, but we ended up taking the total cost just because we'd had some comments from some of our clients asking us about, how is this averaging out with the daily, like how many days per trip are people spending out on the road? And so we brought that into the spend number just because our clients had feedback on it and they wanted more information.
Absolutely. It's a great point. So this is, very much an evolving project, and absolutely responsive to what our customers are saying. Um, you said something in there that I spurred something, and now it's gone away. That's all right. In the interest of time, I'm going to continue on. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that, just in that, aside from the design work that goes into how this should be communicated to customers, what it should look like, how it can grab their attention and give them the information with as little as possible, right? Easily digestible. There's also the whole data process behind it, and these alone, these 4 visualizations alone incorporate 12 different measures of the trip, right? For air, for hotel, for car. We've got to track the current month or the most recent month's spend. We've got to track the month before that, and then we've got to do, the analysis of change from month to month. And what we found is, I already made the point about positive and negative, green and red, so I'll move on from there. What we found is that the index actually seems to be a bit of a hit with our customers. It's among the more viewed components of the company's website. It's been given some attention in industry publication, and people are looking at it as an indicator of the rebound, the comeback of travel. And so now our challenge is to think about, well, do we build onto this? What else can we do with this? We've got a lot more data to generate more than those 12 measures. We can get broader in terms of the types of data, of metrics that we're looking at, whether it's, average number of nights at a hotel, the average price per night, the average number of days car rental, how far ahead are bookings being made on average, right? That makes a difference in terms of how much companies are spending. So we can get broader, we can get more granular in terms of who it is, not who it is that we're talking about, but the types of companies that we're talking about. And so we can create effectively benchmark measures for based on size of customers, et cetera. And we can get more contextualized in terms of, say, where is it that we see travel rebound, right? If there's a 10% increase in the number of flights over a previous month, is there somewhere that they're particularly going? Is there a market segment which is sort of industry jargon for the pair of where you start and where you're going to, right? So say Indianapolis to LaGuardia, right? That's a market segment. And when going back to this idea of contracting between companies and airlines, that's how they do it. They go and they say, we are a company, and we've got a headquarters in Chicago, and we do a lot of traveling back and forth between Chicago and Dallas, and we know that that United is going to be the main carrier that we're going to use, And so they go in and they negotiate, we will book X percentage of our volume in this market segment between these two cities with you. And if we do that, how much can you drop your cost for us, right? And then the issue becomes tracking that, monitoring that, ensuring that the bookings that are being done are actually surpassing that threshold, because the airline's doing it, but they're not necessarily sharing with the customer who's doing the booking. And so that's, again, this is an area where we can provide data analytics tracking of that, for our customers. But yeah, when I say that we can get more contextualized about where it is that we're talking about, that's what I mean. We can begin to track this more in terms of where people are traveling from and to and between, and whether or not, for example, more flights are domestic or increasingly international again. These are areas for expanding
I
the
think
index moving forward. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, I think leisure versus corporate was also a big thing, especially
Yes.
at the very beginning, because when you look at the TSA throughput, that's everything and everybody, and you can't really say, oh, this many was business travel and this many was not. And we are so roped in, our company is so roped into corporate travel, that when we created our index and anonymized all of the data, we still these are specifically our customers. So there's this look at, oh, the Cornerstone Index has this slant towards corporate, that a lot of the corporate travel people might look at more, because we don't have the same slant that the TSA is towards leisure, because most people traveling out there are leisure.
That's a great point, Liren. And the data geek in me gets excited about that point, because here you have one graph that I showed that is comprehensive, right? Rarely do you have all the data, the entire count, but we do from TSA. We have the entire count of the number of people every day going through TSA, which everybody has to, right? But for our customers, the more limited sample set, in many cases, is more useful, because it's more similar to their travelers, right? So they're getting a more accurate or valid measure, I guess, in some respects, for what they're concerned about.
So Rob, let's
Yep.
take some questions here in the
Look at
last
that.
10 minutes, but I wanted to ask, just in general, if somebody was majoring in data science or data engineering, how would they go about getting a career like this? Or because I'm going to say right now, my degree is in archaeology, but I graduated into the recession and found my way here in weird places. How does someone like you go and major in data engineering and get a position like this within the corporate world?
Right. Well, like you, I was a political scientist. So, but when I was coming up, there was no data science. Now there is. So, and IU has such incredible programs for data science, and technology more generally. But as I said earlier, there are certain tools that you definitely need to learn. You need to know if you want to apply and get a job in data science. You're going to need to know how to use SQL. That is across the board essential.
For those who don't know, SQL is spelled SQL.
Right, SQL.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what the makeup of the group here is in terms of how deep you are into this stuff, but there are different types of data that you can get, right? Some are what we call structured, and they're in tables, right? Again, think about a spreadsheet. That is a table. It's a row and column table, and SQL is really, really good at managing that type of data. So if you can store your data in tables like that, and you want to join pieces of information from different of those tables together, you're going to use SQL to do that. But there are also other tools that are increasingly used for non-structured data. So if you're getting it streaming data from the web, for instance, it's going to come in often in JSON into what's called JSON documents. And that's just a very different way of storing data, and there are different tools to use. MongoDB, for example, is the one that I learned initially, but there are a number of different ones out there that you might become interested in learning. As I said, Python, are the different cloud tools. All of those things are skills that you can develop. You don't need to have them all to start in a career. So don't be intimidated that I just rattled off a number of things, because I didn't have that when I came into this job. But I've learned. And what you find is that you primarily learn by doing. You primarily learn by projects that you're involved in. I learn new skills, new tools in doing this, and I do everything else. From my perspective, even though the tools are essential, those skills, really understanding data, how to think about data, how to think about translating a question that you might have into something that is answerable with data. That whole thought process is almost more important to come into a career with, because the skills, as I said, they can come and you learn them as you do. But what I find myself, no matter what tool I'm using, what I find myself doing all the time is going back to my study of methods, research and analysis methods, and thinking about, okay, so I want to figure this out. How do I go about doing that? And how do I go about doing that in a way that's rigorous, right? That doesn't just come up with an answer, it comes up with the right answer.
Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? We've still got about 6 minutes.
So there's one on the chat.
There is a note in the chat to go ahead and fill out the event evaluation form.
That's it.
If you can help fill it out, that'd be much appreciated.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I guess I am about to graduate from my undergrad degree, and I've done business analytics, which is sort of data analytics, but with economics mixed in. I guess I was wondering, like, in terms of further study and all of the different platforms and languages that you mentioned, is it, I guess in this day and age, is it worth it to kind of pursue master's degrees in data science, or is it more, I guess, can you do all of this stuff on your own as well without having to attend like an actual institution and doing it?
It's a great question.
Both are valid options.
and both are very valid options. I mean, I think that there are trade-offs to either one. If you are someone who is you know, very self-driven, and you are someone who is able to on your own make use of the resources that are out there on the internet, whether you're paying for a data camp or, you know, one of the online instruction tools, or even just using the free resources, open resources that are out there. You can do it. There's no doubt that you can learn this stuff on your own. And from my perspective, and I know I've talked about this with some of my colleagues, and they would agree, whatever resource you're using, the best way to do it is to come up with some questions or projects that you're interested in. They don't even have to be relevant. I mean, to any business case. Come up with something that you're really, really interested in finding out more about, and learn answering those questions. It's doable. The trade-off is that you're not guided through that process as much by people who have done this, you know, with lots of people, with lots of students, and guided them through that, and that can be an advantage too. So it's a preference thing.
We do have a question, says, what does it take to stand out as an applicant for positions we have available at Cornerstone?
What does it take to stand out? Come see us. No, for real. I mean, like, you know, don't just send an email. Sending an email is good. It's better than just dropping a resume, which can work too. But follow up, communicate. You know, one thing that I wish I recognized more as a student than I did, that I do now, is that, you know, whatever you're dealing with other people, and people are more responsive the more they know you, or the more that they're exposed to you. And so if you can get a conversation with someone, if you can ask, if you can come in and talk about an opportunity that's available, that's probably a really good way, because you're going to be remembered more than you know, the raft of resumes. And if you're here and we're here, then it might be worth doing that.
I'll also put in to the previous question. So my husband is also a programmer here at Cornerstone, and he's not in data science, he's in computer engineering, and on his team, he has, I will say, half of a law degree, I think. He came in, he was actually international. He came to the States, switching careers midway through his education. And he's working on a team currently with someone who has a master's in, I think it's C. I don't actually know. Don't quote me. I'm so sorry. But you know, he's thinking maybe at some point he might go back and get a degree, but he's also working alongside somebody who has a master's in her programming language. And she's been working here at Cornerstone a lot longer, and she's a senior engineer, and he's only been here for a few years, so he's not. But
He's really good.
Thank you. But they do get together and they find each other, you know, in a Slack room or in a Zoom call or something, working on the exact same problems and solving things in the same setting. And I think that's a fantastic example of somebody who, had some time and wanted to learn something, new and was self-driven versus somebody who wanted the formal, education experience. And she went out and got it and kicked butt. And she's now a senior engineer. And then he came in saying, yeah, I've been driven. I know how to do this. And they both ended up hired and they both got on the same team. So yeah, so it is 4:01. I am going to offer that if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, please feel free. I think for both of us. I
Mhm.
didn't want to
Yep.
speak
Definitely.
for both of us.
Feel free to reach out.
Yep. And even if it's not for, even if it's just for career advice and
Mhm.
not necessarily for Cornerstone, but, you have more questions like that, we're definitely available, and you can definitely reach both of us on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Thank
thanks
you
so much. Take care. Oh, we good?
Oh, we have thank you and thank you.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you to you guys too.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.